gives a command to his followers, go get this donkey that's tied and bring it to me. You remember that. You remember that he did that to fulfill scripture that was written in Zechariah chapter 9, and that he spent that last mile riding on that donkey. Coming to them is the King of Peace. You remember that. And then right after Matthew writes that Jesus entered the city, the very next thing that Matthew records is right here in chapter 21 and verse 12. Matthew writes, and Jesus entered the temple, and he drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. Look, this is savage Jesus. This is angry Jesus. So the Lord goes into the temple, watch the text, and he overturned the tables, watch the text, of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. Now everybody pause. Now if you just read Matthew's account with a cursory eyes, he would make it seem to the reader that as soon as Jesus entered the city, he automatically went to the temple. But Mark, another gospel writer who was not an immediate follower of Christ but was a disciple of Peter, he makes the same account but gives us a detail in his account that Matthew omits. And verse 11, listen to what Mark says. And he, that is Jesus Christ, when he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple, watch this, and when he had looked around at everything, the Lord comes into the city, he goes straight to the temple, and then Mark writes, he looked around at everything. As it was already late, he went out of the city back to Bethany with the 12. On that Sunday afternoon, he goes straight to the temple. He surveys everything that's happening in the temple. Then he leaves and he goes back to Bethany, a suburb, for the night. He comes into the city, and the first thing he's concerned about is the spiritual condition of his people. He doesn't go straight to a restaurant. He doesn't go to the mall. He comes into the city, and his primary concern is the spiritual condition of God's people. He comes into Jerusalem, he goes straight there, watch this, and then he goes home for the night. He has time to meditate on what he saw. He has time to think about what he saw. And as he sat all night and probably thought about what he saw and meditated on what he saw and thought in his heart about what he saw, what does he do? Now Matthew tells us he comes back on Monday. He comes back with, watch this word, holy anger in his heart. And he goes back to the temple and he drives out the money changers. He drives out those who are selling. He drives out those who are buying. What is he? He's mad and furious about what he sees as a glorified flea market inside the temple.
In order